Why was it so important for Yaakov?
Why was it so unimportant for Eisav?
So this week, Parshat Toldot, we find two of the more famous stories that follow us from kindergarten all the way through adulthood about Ya'akov and Eisav. The first story in the beginning of the Parsha, the second story at the end of the Parsha. They seem to not be connected, maybe sometimes a little bit connected, but really, when you think about them, they are super connected. One really is part of the other. Where in the first story, we find Yaakov Avinu buying the Bechora, buying the right to be the firstborn from Eisav, which is a very weird thing to buy, because either you are the firstborn or you're not the firstborn, but it does have some halachic implications. But still, it's not a normal thing to buy. And then later on, at the end of the Parsha, we find Yaakov Avinu so-called stealing the bracha from Eisav. Now, in Hebrew, these two words, Bechora, bracha, are very similar to each other. Obviously, there's a connection between the two, but even more so, besides the idea of Yaakov buying the Bechora, and why was it so important for Yaakov to buy the Bechora, if you want to say it's so that Yaakov will have the legitimacy to be the strong one, to be the one in charge, to be in control, we already see before he was born that Rivka was told Rav Ya'avod Tza'ir that the younger one will be in charge, the younger one will be the one in control. So what exactly is going on over here? Why is it so important for Yaakov Avinu to buy the Bechora from Eisav? Why does this lead into him taking the bracha from Eisav? And what is so important about these two things?
It's very interesting, actually. Also, Eisav's response is interesting. Yaakov says, sell me your Bechora. What does Eisav respond? I'm going to die. Why do I even need Bechora? Which is an interesting statement. You know, he was hungry, he was tired. It didn't say anywhere he was about to die. What is that statement? I'm anyways about to die, so why do I even need the Bechora? And another word which I think will help us understand is the word kayom. Yaakov turns to Eisav and doesn't just ask for his Bechora, he asked for his Bechora today. Icha kayom. I want you to sell me today your Bechora. Why is that? What is this discussion about today versus tomorrow? I mean, sell me tomorrow. What is the point of sell me today? But before we answer that, let's try to really understand first, what does that even mean? What does a Bechor mean? What does it mean to be a firstborn? Why is that something I want? Why is that something I would purchase from someone else? And if we look in the Torah, what it means to be firstborn, we first of all know it's important. It shows up in Shemot, Mi Bechori Yisrael. Am Yisrael is called the Bechor. We know about the story of Makat Bechorot, killing the firstborn in Mitzrayim. We know we have halachot about the firstborn, Heterechem, and others. So there's obviously certain special value in the Bechor. And the Torah itself explains, when discussing the concept of the Bechor receiving double, inheriting double, it explains why. Ki hu reshit ono lo mishpat ha-Bechora. Why is he, what makes him different? He's reshit ono. What does reshit ono mean? Ono means his strength. He's the beginning. He's the reshit, the beginning of his strength. In other words, the reshit, the beginning of something, is not just something in time. It didn't just happen before other things. It's the beginning of something coming into the world. It's beginning of revealing your strength into the world. You're a father, you can be a father of many children, but that first moment, that moment that makes you a father, that moment is reshit ono, is the one that brings out your strength, that reveals your strength. It's the beginning of that strength. And everything that comes after that is an expansion of that same strength. So in a certain sense, the Bechor represents that initial spark, the source of it all, where it all started, where it all came from. And maybe this is why we also dedicate the first. We have the Bikurim, which we've spoken about. We have the Bechor, which we have a Pidyon Ben, right? Because the Bechor, we're saying that there's something about that initial point. There's something spiritual, even though we're talking about a physical existence, physical revelation of your first child, your strength in this world. That initial moment of bringing that potential into this world is a very spiritual moment. It's something we want to hold on to and dedicate. And originally, the Bechorot were the ones that were the Kohanim. Because if the Bechor is the Kohen, then we all are Kohanim. That it influences the whole family. If you elevate, if you sanctify the beginning, you've actually sanctified everything that comes after. And maybe this is where Yaakov and Eisav differ. Eisav is focused, as we spoke about last year, on the external side of things. We said that's why he's called Edom. That's why he's focused on the color of the suit. But he's also focused only on the here and now. That's maybe what Yaakov's saying. Michrali kayom, you really want this. All you care about is the now, right? You're hungry, you're looking at the food, all you see is that it's read. So today, in this day, which you don't care about the future, you don't really care about the past, you're focused on the now. So Michalik Tayom, if all you're looking at is the now, then you're right. The Bechora has no meaning, has no essence. So what do you even care? And Eisav agrees with Yaakov. He says, you're right. I'm going to die, whether it's today, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's at some point in time. I'm focused on living now, on enjoying my life on the now. And therefore, what do I need Bechora for? I don't really care about the past. I don't care about the future. I care about now. I care about my life now. And this is the difference. Yaakov is investing in his past, is investing in his connection to the source, to his father. He wants to be that continuation. He cares about being that beginning from his parents. He cares about the future. He cares about what it means to hold on to the Bechora in the future. We saw this just lately, someone else, Avraham Avinu, who also purchases, who invests money in something that the people around him don't see value in. He sees this gravesite, the gravesite that Chazal say was the gravesite also of Adam and Chava, and he wants this place. He knows that it's connecting him back to the source, to the beginning of things, and he knows that that has value. And people around him are looking at the money, I have more money, less money, looking at the here and now. Avraham is ready to invest in that. Yaakov is looking and learning from Avraham and trying to invest in that and trying to show Eisav, you don't care about that. Let me have that. I'm the one who actually wants to be that continuation of my father. I want to be connected to that initial strength, to revealing my father's strength in the world. I want to be the one that reveals my father in this world, that brings his strength, brings his message, and continues his message in this world.
Exactly. I think that's exactly it. That's exactly the point. Maybe this whole idea of who gets to continue Yitzchak in this world is what's standing over here behind the battle between Ya'akov and Eisav. Because later on in the Parsha, when we get to the story of Yaakov taking the bracha instead of Eisav, when you look at that perek in the Torah, there's one word that repeats itself again and again, and you can't miss it. You can't not notice it. And that's the word of ben, of son. Whether it's in regards to Yitzchak, bno, or whether it's in regards to Rivka, bna. But the use of the word ben just repeats itself again and again and again throughout the entire perek. And when you look at the context exactly where it appears, it's amazing because it reveals an entire story over here. Because what is this idea of a ben? A ben comes from the word binyan, building, because a ben is the continuation, is the building that continues to be built on top of the previous generations. That's what the son is. That's what a ben is, especially in regards to the father. And as we know from the beginning of the Parsha, Yitzchak loved Eisav and Rivka loved Yaakov. And when you look at Perek of Zayin, you see how Yitzchak is always referring to Eisav as Bno, and Rivka is the one calling Bna Yaakov. She also calls Eisav Bna Gadol, but Yitzchak is always referring to Eisav as Bno. And even more so, when Yaakov comes to Yitzchak and says, I am Eisav, he doesn't use the word son. He just says, I'm your oldest Eisav. When Eisav comes to Yitzchak, he says, I'm your son, your oldest Eisav. And the same thing also when Yaakov says, eat from my food, he just says, eat from my food. Eisav says, eat from the food your son has prepared for you. And really, you see how Yitzchak looks at Eisav as his son, as his continuation, like you were saying, as the one to fulfill his potential in the world, to bring his message into the world. And Yaakov saying, no, Eisav is not your son. I'm the one to continue you. And this is exactly what Rivka wants. She wants Yaakov to continue the way of Yitzchak. And seeing this, the difference, how Yitzchak always refers to Eisav as Bno, where Rivka refers to Yaakov as Bna. And Yaakov not mentioning Eisav as the son. You have to see the battle over here. Who's going to be the continuation of Yitzchak? Who's going to be the binyan that is being built? Not only the genetic son, but who's the son that continues the way, the ben that will continue the message into this world? And really the more amazing thing in the psukim is once Yitzchak understands that Yaakov actually took the bracha from Eisav and he accepts it, he accepts that Yaakov is the continuation of him. He'll be the one to continue his way in the world. He'll be his ben, he'll be his binyan. He stops using the term bni, bno towards Eisav, and it's only mentioned once where he turns to Eisav and says, what can I do for you, son? As to say, how can you be my son now that Yaakov has everything? Yaakov is the one to continue my way. And really understanding this, seeing this in the psukim, this use of this term bni, bno, ben, who is the continuation of Yitzchak? This is probably what's behind this battle between Yaakov and Eisav, because again, the real bracha from Yitzchak, the Birkat Avraham, Yaakov only gets later on before he leaves to Charan. The bracha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blessed Avraham and was given to Yitzchak is only given on to Yaakov after all this story. This is not the bracha that they were arguing about. And also, as I started off, the ideas over here of the Bechora and the Bracha are intrinsically connected. These two words in Hebrew both have the same letters, Bet, Kaf, Resh, in different orders. But even more than that, these letters represent the number 2. It's 220, 200. And as we know, a Bechor gets 2 times what the others get, like you mentioned, because the idea of Bechor is not only to be himself, but to continue forward the generations and continue forward the path that has been paved by the previous generations, and to be the one to continue building this binyan in the world. That's the idea of the Bechor. That's the idea of Am Yisrael being Bni Bechori Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's representatives in the world. That's the idea of the Bechorot being the Kohanim before Chet HaEgel. This is what being a Bechor is. This is what Yaakov Avinu wanted so much, to make sure that he gets both the Bechorah and the Bracha in order to pave the way to create Am Yisrael, Bni Bechori Yisrael, to represent HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world.
It's very interesting what you're saying about no. We actually see this already with Avraham and Yitzchak in the last Parsha, when it talks just before Avraham dies. It talks about him having other children from Torah, and it ends with saying Ulivnei Afilagshim, refers them as their children. He gives all different presents and sends them, and it references them as opposed to Yitzchak Beno. So again, we see it's not about who he gave birth to, because he gave birth to all, but that concept of Ben really representing the concept of Yitzchak continuing him, and Yaakov continuing Yitzchak here. And just to take it one step further, what you were saying about Bechor and Bracha, if the Bechor is really us recognizing where the source came from, where the beginning came from, the concept of the Bracha is exactly the concept of allowing that source to bless on, to continue onwards. And this is why we see throughout all of Sefer Bereshit the concept of a father blessing the son. It's always the father blessing the son. There's so much meaning to passing this blessing on. And it's interesting, the word bracha, we know the Mishnah uses the concept lehabrich, when it's talking about taking an existing plant, an existing tree, bending the branch over while it's still connected to the ground, and bending it into the earth so it grows new roots. So what that tree is doing is that tree is already connected to the earth. It has its own roots. It's connected to the source, and it's helping a new branch grow its own roots. It's helping it connect to the source. That's what a bracha is. We're taking our connection to the previous source and passing it on, helping the next generation, helping whoever we're blessing connect themselves, not to us, but to what we're connected to, connecting back to the source of bracha. And this is exactly the same thing. The Bechor is that source, is that initial moment where you most recognize the bracha. The Bechor is that moment where you most connect to the bracha, where you most connect to that root, you most appreciate it. That moment when the first child is born, when the first anything happens, is a moment that you recognize where it's coming from. You recognize its source. And then the bracha is when you're actively trying to connect the generation back to that source even more. Yaakov, holding on both to the Bechor and to the bracha, is the one who really wants to continue Yitzchak, and maybe because of that is the one who also gets Birkat Avraham. Because if you connect to Yitzchak, you're actually connected to Yitzchak's source, which comes from Avraham, which comes all the way back from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That desire to hold on to the Bechorah versus being focused just on the here and now is what makes Yaakov, makes him not just receive the bracha, but also be the one at the end to deserve the bracha, even the bracha of Avraham.
Beautiful, and it's even more interesting because today we have the ones that give us the brachas are the Kohanim, which are instead of the Bechorot. They're the ones to give us the bracha every single day, every morning. However, we're out of time, so we'll have to stop here. We'll just remind our viewers what we discussed last year. Last year, like you mentioned in the beginning, we talked about Ya'akov and Eisav. Why is Eisav so tired? Why is he called the dome? What is Eisav trying to be? What is he about? And how is he different from Yaakov Avinu? We'll link that video right now. And as always, if you like this video, feel free to like it. Comment below with your suggestions, with your thoughts and ideas. Feel free to share the video. And of course, if you haven't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. Shkoyach Yitzi.
Shkoyach Tuvia, Chodesh Tov, Shabbat Shalom.
Chodesh Tov, Shabbat Shalom, and we'll talk again next week. For more Talking Torah videos on different topics, check out our YouTube channel.